sitting outside Civirinos Slice, checking out a slice of this Detroit pizza, which looks beautiful. It's been for an interview today, so heading for here down to Greyfriars Cemetery, which is that way. But first, going to check out this pizza slice. So on this particular afternoon in Edinburgh, I found myself on Forest Road, which is near the Meadows, a place where you find a lot of good restaurants, and what I've been meaning to try out for a long time is Civirinos Slice, which is a New York style pizza slice bar, which I went for an interview from. Recently some positions came up, so I decided to go for the interview, and the guy, the owner of the pizza place, let me choose a slice of pizza. So I was leaving, I asked if I could check out one of the pizzas, and I decided to go for this Detroit slice, which just looked amazing. I mean, look at the pepperoni on that. Look at the char on the pepperoni for the fired oven. What it is a deep dish Detroit base with double-decker pepperoni and a honey chili drizzle, then topped with parsley and parmesan. Hands down the best pizza slice I've ever eaten in my life, but I underestimated how much chili was on it. Didn't have a drink of juice or water, and it lit up my mouth like the 4th of July. But best pizza slice I've ever had, hands down. So this area of Edinburgh is known as the Meadows, sort of a wide open green space, and today we've got a lot of cricket going on. Filming this on the last days of April. See all the pink blossoms. It's kind of one of the things the Meadows is famous for, is these beautiful cherry blossoms. A couple of weeks you'll start to see the ground get covered in the snow, the pink snow that falls for the trees. Beautiful place to walk. So we're currently in the National Museum of Scotland on this rainy day in Edinburgh. So this footage was shot in the National Museum of Scotland, which has a history dating back to the late 1700s into sort of the mid 1800s. This was originally the Society of Antiquaries of Scotland, which was founded in 1780, and then ownership of that collection passed into public hands in 1851, and that basically is when the National Museum of Antiquaries in Scotland is thought to originate as 1851. So basically it arose as a desire to have a museum reflecting Scottish history, as well as demonstrate international cultures, natural and physical sciences, and decorative art for Scotland. So as is the case with most large museums in most large cities, it would be impossible to show you everything that's on display in the museum. If I did that, the video would be more than 3 hours long. So in this particular visit, I just kind of highlighted some of the things I thought might be interesting in order to keep the vlog moving along, but also to give you guys something interesting. But as the different displays and the different exhibitions come up over the summertime, I probably will head back to the museum to focus on specific sections or specific exhibitions. So one of the main things to point out that's quite interesting about the gallery is this Millennium Clock, which takes the form of a medieval cathedral. Standing at just over 10 metres high, it marks the passing of time, but it's also a summary of the best and worst of the 20th century. It's an intricately animated construction comprising 4 sections, which is the crypt, the nave, the belfry and the spire, and each part has its own stories to tell and secrets to reveal. Now, the clock was put into position just before the millennium in 1999. It was made by 5 different masters of their craft. Tim Steed, a furniture maker, Edward Besudsky, a kinetic sculptor, Annika Sandstrom, a glass artist, Jürgen Tubech, a clockmaker, and Maggie Lennert, an illustrator. And it's made from a mixture of wood, glass and metal. And very impressive it is too. So in a section that was kind of designed more for kids, I found this unique situation with this piece of china that asks, you know, what's the story with this china? Use your imagination to figure out how this very interesting mess of china joined together with what looks like either tree bark or rock from the seabed. And next to the china there was a a book that's kind of designed for kids, but I still thought it was a very intriguing story about how this particular artefact came to be in the museum. So I read the story out for you guys. So I guess this tells us the story of the cups. Every object in the museum has a story to tell. Look closer at the china cups nearby. How do you think they got here? Over 200 years ago, many beautiful blue and white cups were made by potters in China, planning to sell them to rich people in Europe. Europe was on the other side of the world. To get there, the cups had to travel on a big ship called the John Thomas. As the John Thomas sailed past the Cape of Good Hope in Africa, there was a huge storm. The ship sank to the bottom of the sea along with all the treasure on board. Hundreds of years later, some divers discovered the shipwreck and rescued the blue and white cups. They're still stuck in the seabed. The next year, in 1886, we were brought to the museum here in Edinburgh, looked after. In those days it was called the Edinburgh Museum of Science and Art. So we went to the museum store and chose a shipwreck china to display in our gallery so that we could share its exciting story with you. So that's pretty cool. I thought it was tree bark, but it's just that it's the seabed. The seabed of the 1700s. This area here is all the music from around the world. As you can hear, it's kind of noisy. So I'll show you this album. Some torture equipment associated with the witch hunt era. These objects in image vividly illustrate the Scots were sometimes prepared to put this biblical verse into practice. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. Page Demonology. James VI tract on witchcraft. The king's interest in witchcraft was linked to his belief that he was the devil's greatest enemy on earth. Trustees of the National Library of Scotland.
The urban world had all begun to change during the reign of King David I. David made all this possible by granting special rights to towns across the country. These were enshrined in charters, each bearing the royal seal. Trade and prosperity blossomed, and the landscape changed. Where once had been villages and small markets, there now grew towns and business centres with links across the world. Over the next 500 years, permission was given to create almost 200 boroughs, the most powerful being the royal boroughs, followed by the ecclesiastical and baronial. The royal boroughs traded internationally. Perth had links with the Low Countries and the Baltic nations. We know foreign merchants made regular visits to the town. The secrets of the boroughs have quite literally been unearthed by diligent archaeologists. Successive phases of urban development since 1970 have offered them the chance to dig for evidence of the buildings and lifestyles enjoyed by our forebears.
Scotland's first weapon of war, the arrow tip. So around 5,500 years ago, an arrow tip lodged deep in someone's back. This evidence of deliberate killing, a murderous shot from a personal enemy. Was it part of something bigger? Perhaps this is the first known victim of armed conflict in Scotland. After all, people were killing each other, bows and arrows elsewhere in Britain at the time. The archer's intention will never be known. This could have been a hunting accident, the arrowhead just a hunting tool. The arrowhead could have been a weapon, as well as being useful tools. Arrows, axes and maces could have dealt death to other human beings. Got some Stone Age tips here. Very cool. So we're heading to Greyfriars Courtyard. It's currently lunchtime and Greyfriars pub was crowded, couldn't get a seat. It was unfortunate because it's one of the oldest pubs and I kind of wanted to get a drink there and then, you know, talk about the history of Greyfriars, but it'd be impossible just with the noise. So we found this little place which I've never been to before, which has got Nanyang, Chinese, bubble tea, yeah, Butterburger, and this place here, Soderberg, which is very nice looking. I guess they, yeah, a nice little restaurant with pizzas and stuff like that. The first time I'll be in this square in Edinburgh, so just interesting to see. So this is the entrance to Nanyang Restaurant in Leicester Square. It's like I was saying, the Greyfriars pub that I wanted to go to was far too busy at lunchtime. So we walked here, which is not far, first time I've ever been here. As far as Edinburgh city prices go, I thought the prices for the Malaysian meals here were really quite fair. A lot of things in Edinburgh, especially after the cost of living increase, are very expensive, but this place actually, I felt like it was really good value for money. And the food was really good as well. So as we're sitting just watching this hop along pigeon hop along and drinking our beer, I decided to order a Tsingtao beer that, if it's ever on the menu, I'll pretty much always order this beer. It's one of my favourites, and you know, it goes really well with Asian food. So for the meals, my dad went for a deep fried prawn dish. It comes with sweet and sour vegetables. And I decided to try their standard chicken curry, which came with green beans, cashew nuts and potato, and a side of egg fried rice, which is nicely topped with some spring onions. So yeah, the curry was fantastic. $12.95 it came in at, £3 for the rice, so £15. But you know, a very big portion. I struggled to finish it because I'd already eaten that giant slice of Detroit chili honey slice from Civirinos. So this is the famous Greyfriars Kirkyard. The grave of famous dog, Greyfriars Bobby. Famously slept by his master's grave after his master died. Yeah, sort of tells you the story just as you come in there. So the footage you're about to see is all shot in Greyfriars Cemetery, one of Scotland's most haunted places, but also has this intriguing story about a little Scotty dog, a little Skye Terrier named Bobby. Bobby was the name of a Skye Terrier who belonged to John Gray, a night watchman for the Edinburgh Police. The two were inseparable for 2 years. However, in February 1858, Gray died of tuberculosis. He was buried in Greyfriars Kirkyard. Bobby, who had survived John Gray by 14 years, is said to have spent the rest of his life sitting on his master's grave. The gardener and keeper of Greyfriars tried on many occasions to evict Bobby, but in the end they took pity on him. He was built a shelter and was fed regularly. Bobby never spent a night away from his master's grave, even in the most dismal weather conditions. In 1867, the Lord Provost of Edinburgh paid for Bobby's dog licence, making him the responsibility of the City Council. Bobby sadly died in 1872. He could not be buried within the cemetery itself since it was consecrated ground. Instead, he was buried just inside the gate of Greyfriars Kirkyard, not far from John Gray's grave. So what we see here is Greyfriars Kirk, which traces its origins back to the year 1598. And the church is named for the Observantine Franciscans, or otherwise known as the Greyfriars, who arrived in Edinburgh from the Netherlands in the mid-15th century and were granted land for a friary at the south western edge of the city. So this cemetery is thought to be one of Scotland's most haunted locations. A lot of reports of poltergeist and paranormal activity, people being scratched or people fainting due to paranormal circumstances. And the thought is that most of the unrest, most of the spiritual unrest is found in the area known as the Covenanters Prison. Which every single time I go here, the Covenanters Prison is kind of locked off to the public, but you can gain access to it as part of a ghost tour group. So there's like quite a lot of different haunted Edinburgh tours that go through the most haunted part of the Kirkyard. I myself have never been in the Covenanters Prison. Maybe someday, one Halloween, I'll be brave enough to go in there and do a little documentary, but yeah, it's a very, very haunted place. On this particular instance, it's the first time I've ever went inside the kirk. Beautiful, very, very much worth a visit. This is the first time I've ever been inside the church at Greyfriars. An interesting little display here. So the church and the museum, really.
Like a community of friends where everyone supports each other. The church is what is in our heart and what we do to each other.
So this area here that's always locked off, every time I've come here it's locked off. This is a Covenanters prison. It's supposed to be one of the most haunted areas in Scotland. Lots of reports of people get attacked by, I guess, angry spirits. Never actually been in there, don't really want to go in. I guess I could take a picture of this, but it basically tells you the story of the Covenanters. I'm not going to read it all out, but I'll try and take a photograph of it. So it's George Mackenzie, I thought it was John Mackenzie, but that's his tomb there. The story is that I think sometime in the 90s or maybe 80s, a homeless person broke in there, broke down to like basically underneath this area is a whole crypt. This is all built up on layers and layers and layers of burials. So the homeless guy kind of fell in, freaked out, and since then there's supposed to be like violent poltergeist activity happens in the graveyard, mostly in the Covenanters prison, and they think it's the disturbed spirit of George Mackenzie. I guess I'll put some more information about who he was in the post. It's another really impressive old mausoleum. Lord Provost of the City of Edinburgh. Crumble inspiration. Oh yeah, he's the founder, I guess the founder of Edinburgh University, founder of the library. A strange situation happened with my camera there. I was taking a photo of this and the frame froze. It wouldn't move. Even when I put the camera off, the camera wouldn't go off, which it's never done before. I take the batteries out, put the batteries back in, everything seems fine. I kind of thought, oh no, please hope they haven't wiped my memory card for angry spirits. Yeah, but at least maybe it was just a glitch in the camera. On the street behind you there's so many good eateries, like Civirinos is just over there. Loads of other pubs and restaurants that get the overwhelming smell of really well-fired pizza, shawarma, chips frying. It smells amazing in here. Even though it's probably quite scary at night, and you know the history of the place is not the best. Definitely worth a visit when you're in Edinburgh. This is Nidri Street, one of the oldest and most haunted streets, where this is the ghost tour start for. These freaky pictures here. And just up here is the Banshees Labyrinth, which is kind of one of the more interesting pubs in Edinburgh. It's got a free cinema. They show different films. So if you're ever in Edinburgh and you missed your train or your last train or bus home, you can come here until 3 AM. They show movies from, I think it's, yeah, here you go. Cinema, 5 PM, Finding Nemo. You want to come see Finding Nemo. Improv, Candyman, that'd be kind of. Then 12 AM, Troy. Definitely every day. You can do your own. You can show your own movies for free. Bring DVDs in, or if you have a film you've made yourself, perfect place to show it. Banshees on Nidri Street. And it's Halloween every day. So we ended this visit to the beautiful city of Edinburgh by having a pint of Heverlee Belgian lager in a wonderful little area called the Secret Garden, which is found near Waverley Station in Princess Street Mall. It is on Princess Street. Well, you can see in the back is Scott Monument. So just up the street from Scott Monument is this outdoor seating area which has patio here, so even though it's outdoors it's still warm. And they serve food, they serve drink. They had really good beer, batter, haddock and chips, which we didn't try on this particular occasion, but a few of the people sitting near us were eating them and smelled absolutely amazing. So yeah, great place to sit and just watch the sun go down in Edinburgh. Have a nice pint of Heverlee. And hopefully you guys have enjoyed this little day trip in Edinburgh. Hope you found it interesting. And yes, stay tuned for more of these Scottish themed vlogs from me.